Yay. Well, welcome everybody. We'll call the December 13th, 2022 regular meeting of the Foxborough School Committee to order. And first up is an opportunity for open public comment that we have every meeting. And we also have the opportunity, I'll remind folks, to send things into the community inbox between meetings, or really anytime. And then those messages do go out to the entire committee and admin as well. So, Ms. Frazier, I don't believe we have any. Okay, so seeing that no one's here for open public comment, we'll move on to the second agenda item, which is approval of minutes. We've got two sets. The first one is the November 14th meeting of the Policy Subcommittee. Those, like the Policy Subcommittee and the Budget Subcommittee, are all open public meetings, just like this one. And so we do post those and then also post the minutes. So
I would like to propose one change to these minutes. The subcommittee members present were Mr. Richard Pearson and Mr. Rob Canfield.
Thank you. Are there any other changes or questions or concerns regarding those minutes?
Move to accept the minutes of the Policy Subcommittee from November 14.
Second?
All in favor?
Do I vote?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I think we would, yeah.
Oh, I wasn't present, so.
Yes, and I should say, I've been remiss in saying that the full committee will be here. Ms. Raymond was stuck in a mediation, so she'll be along shortly. Up next are the October 18th meeting, our regular meeting minutes from October 18th. Any questions, addendums, concerns from the committee or anybody? Okay, seeing none.
Make a motion that we accept the minutes from the October 18th, 2022 meeting as presented.
I second that.
All in favor? It's 400. Those are both accepted. Those should be posted online very soon. Moving on. Yay. Teaching and learning highlight, which is very popular and very wavy. I Go Girls on the Run. And I'd welcome up anybody who is going to speak to that. Dr. Barros, if you care to introduce, that's fine.
I would love to. So we have our principal, Ms. Danielle Morrissey, and our teachers, Stephanie Benedetti, as well as Linda Poinamani from the IGO, along with some fabulous runners who are going to be coming up and joining us at the front table. Maybe you can walk up to the table, you can sit in the chairs, and then stand around your friends that might be sitting in the chairs.
I want a chair.
And then,
You guys can all share.
yes, you're small enough, two of you can fit in a chair.
You know, let's get a chair.
And
Yeah, probably give.
Awesome. Stand, girls, don't worry. Join me in the chair.
And girls, I'll give you a quick tip. The microphones are
Two
live.
people per chair.
So they are going to be talking with you about something that Ms. Morrissey brought to the IGO Elementary School, and our fabulous special educator, Stephanie Benedetti, and Linda Poinamani, our wellness teacher, led this fabulous group here, Girls on the Run. They're going to tell you what it's all about and what they were able to accomplish. So, Ms. Benedetti, I will turn it over to you.
Sure. So I was lucky enough and had the privilege to coach these amazing girls. We worked for 10 weeks. We practiced 2 times a week. And we not only did we run every time, we had some fun, but we also learned some really important life lessons, some girl empowerment, and really just how to be a good person and a leader. And I'm so proud of how hard they worked every single day, and it was a true joy to be able to coach them. So I'm going to let the girls introduce themselves, if that's okay with you guys. So why don't we start with you, Iz?
My name is Izzy. My name is Hannah. My name is Emma.
My name is Lexi.
My name is Brielle.
My name is Audrey.
My name is Sophia.
My name is Anna.
My name's Nadine.
My name is Soph.
My name's Greta.
And that is our team. We're missing a few of our teammates and our other coach, Mrs. Potamani, but they're here in spirit, I am sure. I will turn your attention over to our little PowerPoint, if that's okay with you.
Just point towards the
hold on.
window.
Oh, I forgot. You taught me how to do this.
Oh,
Okay, so here we are. Girls, what are we doing in the center circle? Go ahead,
Like usually we first talk before when we do these meets, we talk about what we're gonna do, because usually we do an activity about something important every like meet we do.
That's right. Thank you so much. This is just a cute little mugshot of us all, smiling and posing. What is Girls on the Run? Girls on the Run is a program designed to inspire girls of all abilities to recognize and embrace their inner strength and make meaningful connections with others. That is so true within this group. We, as coaches, we use physical activity and discussion to build social, emotional, and physical skills while encouraging healthy habits. So we had a really nice time. We're going to make sure that this continues at our school. It's a research-based curriculum that we followed. It was really, really well organized and well designed. It helped us to understand ourselves as people and valuing relationships and teamwork and recognizing how we have the ability to affect the world around us. We did a really nice community service project. Does anyone want to share what that was all about? Go ahead, Greta.
So we, the aftercare students, they used to go up to the gym on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but that's the time that we practiced, and so they couldn't go up to the gym and run around. So each girl had a partner, and we did a station that had like a different activity. So like some girls did reading a book, some girls did relay races, one girl did cheerleading, and then each aftercare student went to each session to play.
Yeah, so we helped organize a fun afternoon for our aftercare kids and their teachers to give them a little break, and we were able to lead them through some really fun activities. Let's see if we're gonna move on. What are the IGO students saying about Girls on the Run? Go ahead, Soph.
It's like really fun. If you join, then you would actually know the experience. Not trying to say anybody bad not joining, but as soon as you join, you're like, these are like your sisters. And every single time you run, it's so fun. You get to do fun games, and
Amazing.
it's amazing.
Nice job. Anyone else want to chime in? Go ahead, Brielle.
It's kind of like what Soph said. They're like your sisters now, and you like can't leave them. You have to stay with them. And what's your question?
Bullet number 4,
Yeah.
always wear your crown. Can somebody tell me what that one is?
I got it from one of my friends, cause if you don't feel comfortable, you could just pretend you have a crown on, and you could get out of your comfort zone.
That's great, thank you.
Awesome.
Anyone else want to add something else? We heard from you, Celisa. Go ahead, Audrey.
At first, we didn't really know each other, and we weren't good friends with each other. But then when we started doing Girls on the Run, we were able to know each other better, and we became friends.
Awesome.
Very special. All right, and the last part is our amazing slideshow of our entire season.
Yeah, you can be the greatest, you can be the best, you can be the King Kong banging on your chest.
You could beat the world, you could beat the war. You can talk to God, go banging on his door.
You can throw your hands up, you can beat the clock. You can move a mountain, you can break rocks.
You could be a master, don't wait for luck. Dedicate yourself and you gon' find yourself
Standing in the Hall of Fame,
yeah,
and the world's gonna know your name.
yeah,
'Cause you burn with the brightest flame,
yeah,
and the world's gonna know your name.
yeah.
And you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame. You can go the distance, you can run the mile. You can walk straight through hell with a smile.
You could be the hero, you could get the gold. Break Thinking over records they thought never could be broke.
Yeah, do it for your people, do it for your pride. Are you ever gonna know if you never even try?
Do it for your country, do it for your name. Cause there's gonna be a day when you're
Standing in the Hall of Fame, and the world's gonna know your name. Cause you burn with the burst flame, and the world's gonna know your name. And you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame. Be a champion, be a champion, be a champion, be a champion. On the walls of the Hall of Fame. Be students, be teachers, be politicians, be preachers. Be believers, be leaders, be astronauts, be champions, be truth seekers. Be students, be teachers, be politicians, be preachers, Be believers, be leaders, be astronauts, be champions. Standing in the Hall of Fame, and the world's gonna know your name. Cause you burn with the burst flame, and the world's gonna know your name. And you'll be on the walls of the Hall of Fame. Be the greatest, you can be the best. You can be the king, come hanging on your chest.
You can be a girl, you can be the world. You can be a champion, banging on. You can be a master, don't wait for luck. Dedicate your champion, find your
Standing in the Hall of Fame.
That's it. That was
Awesome.
Yeah, we did add stuff. Anyone have any questions for us? Go ahead.
Does it run in the spring as well?
We're actually just going to keep it for the fall. It's going to be fall at the Iorio. We feel like we want to keep it something special, and we don't want it to lose its novelty. So we're going to do it every fall.
Nice.
For sure, yeah. So we'll have some kids moving on, but we'll have our third graders coming up and helping our next batch of Girls on the Run kids. So, but it's exciting. After seeing the video, I want to do the spring. I miss these kids.
And then
But yeah.
girls who are in fourth grade, raise your hand. All right. Have you given your teachers and advisors advice?
What do you mean by that?
In terms of like, because you want this thing to continue, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so you should, you give them some advice in terms of, for the program and whatnot, because they'll listen to you. And third graders, where are you? Raise your hand. All right. You ready to be leaders next year?
Yes.
I mean, you already are, but.
Yes.
Okay. Are you going to recruit?
Yes. Yeah.
Good.
I kind of wish it continued on to 5th grade, so I could still do it.
Well, the interesting thing about that is if you have an idea, you can always pitch the idea.
Maybe we should start our own Girls on the Run. Yeah. Like make it for every kid that wants to do it, but still only girls.
Who are, but also on the run.
Yeah.
But yeah, both.
Girls.
You want both. That's essential.
Yeah, girls.
Understood.
Only girls.
And
We don't want
Girls
boys.
on the Run.
It's called Girls on the Run. We don't want boys.
We only want the girls.
Awesome.
Are any of the boys jealous yet?
No.
We want the boys to be jealous. It's our point. Do you get the point?
All right, girlies.
All right.
12 shots.
Do you get the point?
What do we say for welcoming us
Sorry,
here
sorry.
Thank
tonight?
you. Thank you.
I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to give you one more final thank you. So our school committee meets a couple times a month here in Foxborough at the town hall, and we sometimes meet once a month like this month. But what's really important about your excitement here today and your presentation is that people get to watch us in the community. And two of the last words I heard were leaders in the community and teamwork. They came across the things. So it's really important for your excitement and your energy, and we really appreciate that. And it's important, you're doing a big thing for the town of Foxborough to tell everyone in Foxborough what you're doing and what you love. So thank you for being part of that. That's really huge.
So much.
Thank you.
for having us.
And I'd like to add thank you to your buddies, because I know you had parents that were running with you for the 5K. I was glad that I got to just watch from the sidelines.
Next year.
And so thank you for your parents that were your buddies in running. And then also, I believe we had Miss Casilli and Miss Howe. Is there anybody else that I'm missing, other teachers from IGO that ran the 5K with you? Mrs. Poinamani, yes, and Miss Benedetti. So thank you to them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coming tonight, girls. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ready?
Thank you for being here.
Congratulations.
Job, girls. So proud of you. I'm gonna get you a microphone, Bria.
Right?
Thanks again.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for coming, parents, as
And
well.
thank you, Miss
Thanks for bringing
Morrissey,
them.
our principal,
Thank you.
who brought it here.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great program.
Very cool.
Moving on with more bundles of joy. Next up on the agenda is our superintendent update. Dr. Bertos.
How do you follow that, first of all, right?
That's great.
So I just have a couple of quick updates. One was an email about our flu clinic that took place. We had a great turnout this afternoon. We actually sold out on our flu clinic.
Oh, that's good.
That took place today. But we did send out, I sent it out yesterday on behalf of all of the nurses, that our absences are up. We're seeing a lot of different things. Flu-like symptoms, we're seeing stomach illnesses, those kinds of things too. So if your child is exhibiting any of those symptoms, to please, check in with your nurse at your school if you have any questions, but to keep them home because there are a number of things going around right now. So we just wanted people to be mindful of watching for any of those symptoms with their children. Also, again, on the flu clinic, thank you to our Board of Health and our Public Safety for partnering with us to be able to provide those flu clinics. It's clearly that people are taking advantage of them. I know I did myself. As far as, we've got lots going on this time of year. Last week was a very busy week. I had my community superintendent's coffee that took place the same night as our budget summit from here at the town hall. So we scooted out, Dr. Burrows and I did quickly to go to that over at the library, and then had the budget summit, which we'll get into that a little bit more in the budget presentation. Had a great presentation by Dr. Elizabeth Englander out of the Massachusetts Regression Center at Bridgewater State University. She came and spoke with parents about managing your child's screen time, talking about mental health as far as with topics that go along with social media, as well as how to avoid social problems, and just some real concrete strategies that she provided with parents. They had an opportunity to ask questions in the end. And she always just gives such great tips and advice. So that was at the high school. We had I would say about 35 people that attended. The question is always going virtual for a presentation like that versus being in person as far as the numbers. So that's something that, we're continuing to explore. What's the best way to reach as many people as we can? But her presentation, and she's known around the country and the world, quite honestly. So we're just lucky to have her in our backyard here in Massachusetts. And then also our holiday concert at the high school. That was fabulous. I know I saw some of you there. Thursday night as well with our band, chorus, and orchestra. And then prior to that, Ms. Chantel Wiley, who's our METCO coordinator, had offered a program for our parents to come in and talk about trying to get back the host program, where students that are in our METCO program, if they're staying for events later on that it's not conducive to the late bus or it's something that's going to be the next day, to having a connection with a resident family here in Foxborough. It's something that we had many, many years ago, and she's trying to get that up and going. And I know Mr. Donovan also put that in his newsletter as well, to see any families that are interested in being host families and building those connections. So that was a good turnout as well. I don't know, Dr. Burrows, if you had anything else to add from that evening as far as the host program and what we're trying to.
No, I have nothing else to add. Other than that, I would just add that we had our METCO families come ahead of the holiday concert and had a little meet and greet as well. So we're really trying to build that connection between our METCO families and our resident families.
And then we have our grade 5 concert actually coming up on Tuesday of next week, I think. And then after the new year, we'll be opening up kindergarten registration. So those of you that have elementary students and you have neighbors that are going to be 5 by August 31st, be watching for that registration in January. The sooner that we have people register, that really helps us, particularly as we're talking about budget and classrooms and all of that. So the last one I would mention is that we have some vaping presentations that are coming out for students, middle school and high school students. That's going to be taking place on Monday, December 19th for students. And what's a little bit different about this one, Rebecca Fiddler, who is a licensed mental health counselor, will be providing these workshops for students in the month of December. We'll also have a presentation for families in January on the 25th. But we're sending out questions for parents as just conversation starters to talk with their students about, what did you take from the presentation today? And to give them some background that will help hopefully get that dialogue going at home. Because a lot of times it might be you ask I can speak from my own experience, how was your day? Good. What'd you do at school today? Nothing. You just don't know what kind of conversations you're going to get. But particularly where we have talked about in our culture and climate survey data, with vaping coming from students, coming from staff, and coming from parents being a concern, this is a presentation we're bringing forward to talk about that with students directly, and that will be in different assemblies, like 5th and 6th graders will be together, 7th and 8th graders will be together, and then the high school students will be in one assembly. But it, again, is really to talk about the addictive behaviors, particularly in young youth. And we want that dialogue to be happening with families at home, but also to give them some of the tools and strategies to have those conversations.
That's good.
So that's about it. Any questions?
Is that presentation available online, the one at the high school that you
That
just
Dr.
had?
Englander did?
That you had 30 people there? Do you make it available online?
No, that was
afterwards?
not recorded. It was
Okay,
just
I
in
just
person.
wondered, because you were saying.
She does have great resources on the Massachusetts Aggression site for parents. So if there's anybody that's wanting to follow up or to look at different even books to read, even like books that are written for students, there's some great resources
Thank you.
that she provides.
Thank you. And thank you for getting the word out early on the vaping thing. So I think, as their culture and climate survey said, that's on people's minds a lot. So thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Dr. Berdos. I appreciate it. Next up, Mr. Donovan with Foxborough High School Overnight Travel upcoming, which is a nice change to see as we open up even further.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. So this is a list of pretty familiar trips for approval. Some of them are tentative at this point. So the cheering, the cheerleaders trip, the DECA trip to Orlando, the essentially Ellington Festival, and the track Locks International in New York.
Oh, wow.
That has not occurred in many years. My understanding is that the track program used to attend pretty consistently, but that had stopped at some point. And so we have some new coaches in our program, and they're looking to return to that if possible. So they put it here now, knowing it's a couple of seasons off, and it's still very much tentative. And the French exchange trip as well.
Nice. Any questions?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the proposed overnight trips for the 2022-2023 school year. And I don't know, can we include the 2024 trip, and there's tentative, and we'll include the proposed French trip on for 2024 as well?
Yeah.
A second.
All in favor? All right, that's 5-0-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan, for the organization here. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for the opportunity for our staff and for our kids to take these trips. I do want to just give you one quick update. So you had previously approved a trip to England for February.
Correct.
And the itinerary has changed. The vendor has combined that trip with another trip. So our students were going to be originally scheduled to be in England for the entire week. They're now going to spend part of that week in England and part of it in and around Paris. We gave them, they were given some options to delay the trip, to go later in the year, or to go to take their original itinerary, and the students and families had some input on that decision and chose that option of doing Paris and London over recreating that thing. So I just wanted to provide you with that update.
That's
Do we
fine.
need to vote on amendment of that?
I don't think we do, because it's just, we
just the
have the spot for
itinerary
that becomes more the details of the trip. But thank you for the update. I appreciate it. And I'm
Good for now.
really glad
Yeah,
that they had a
that sounds-
voice in adding that.
That sounds
No,
amazing.
that's nice.
It seems like a very nice plan B.
Yeah, you're right.
for
If-
sure.
If your fallback is to also go to Paris,
Yeah.
I think, I think
It's
that's
nice. All right.
pretty.
Thank you
excellent.
all very much.
Can I make just
Thank
one
you.
suggestion?
Yes,
The
please.
Locks International trip, when athletes travel out of state to a location like this, it's good to get ahead on those to make sure all the approvals can be made with the State Athletic Association.
Absolutely,
So
yes.
I'm sure they're probably on it, but if they haven't done it for a long time, I've heard of situations where people set up out-of-state travel for an athletic team, and it can run into some challenges.
Yes.
So good to get ahead on that one, just to make sure you cover all the bases.
Yeah, and this trip is new to many of us, so we have a couple of steps we're going to have to do before being in a
Yeah.
position to move forward.
Just so that you don't get too far down the road and realize that there's a step that's missed along the way.
Bonafide teams and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, great.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, next up, school committee vote to appoint a school nurse, Ms. Kate
Okay.
Woods.
So as you're aware that there are certain appointments that you do as a school committee, and the nurse is one of those positions. But nurses, in addition to having their RN, they also have to have the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education certification, which takes a little while to get that. So we have them appointed as essentially like a long-term sub with their RN before we can move to that actual appointment. And so Kate Woods, who's the nurse, fabulous at the high school. She's just been such a welcome addition and has done so much. She's now got her certification through DESE in addition to obviously having her RN. So you have her resume and everything within your packet, but it's just a formality, honestly, at this point, so to have the appointment by school committee.
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Kate Woods to the position of school nurse at the high school.
A second.
All in favor? It's 500. Look forward to making it official. That's nice. Yeah, that's excellent.
She's fabulous,
I know, and we're very lucky to have her.
for sure.
We're very fortunate with every one of our nurses here, and the team just continues to get stronger and stronger, if that's even possible with the group that we have.
She started in April 21 and she still came back, so
That's a lot.
That's something.
that's like she's still
Excellent
standing. I mean,
point.
That says something.
Right, that's a tough time to start. Well, moving on, we have some work from the Policy Subcommittee, which is a subset of the school committee, on a couple of different policies. Who would like to introduce that?
Would you like me to provide just kind of an
That's the-
overview?
Yes, sure,
Okay.
Dr. Burris, thank you.
So the policy, we'll start with the first one that you had, which is the non-discrimination and harassment, file AC policy. You have a number of policies currently in the policy manual. And in 2020, August 14th, actually, of 2020, so right before we were opening up in the hybrid, learning and all of that, there was a new regulation law that came in that changed, and we didn't even, the grievance procedures for harassment and civil rights and all of that changed at that point, which we've followed those, but your policy itself needs to be updated to go along with those procedures.
Right.
And you actually didn't even receive from MASC an updated policy until February of '22 on this. We have all of those procedures. They're being followed. They're on our website, but your policy itself needs to be updated. What that essentially did by revising that policy is it shortens a number of your policies. You're able to rescind a number of them because it's taking, it's delegating the responsibility to myself as the superintendent for those grievance procedures. And so as a result of those new regulations, it really lengthens if you are in a Title IX investigation. It takes away a single person who is like in the investigator. There's multiple personnel that are involved now. So it becomes lengthier. And the one policy that you have, you're able to rescind the much lengthier policies that have all the grievance procedures and everything because it falls to the superintendent and putting that together. That was done with your legal counsel. And again, that's on the website with those, but it allows you to then rescind file policy ACR. It allows you to rescind ACA because it is all covered within those procedures, as well as ACAB, which is providing definitions and again, the grievance procedures. So your sub-policy committee, Richard and Rob, Matt, they can speak, but they looked at the MASC policy. They looked at the policy that legal counsel provided us, as well as what our current policy is. So I'll turn it over to Richard and Rob, but that's kind of the umbrella and the reason for updating at this time period.
Thank you for the context.
I'm repeating, I think, what you just said, but this one AC policy brings all the AC subsets into one. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so especially like the second paragraph of this policy, it loops them all in and references all the Title IX and the Title VI and everything. So it kind of brings them all into concise and clear policy for us. So that's the intent.
Right, and in addition, if there are changes to process now, they're not embedded in the policy, they are separate because this references the processes are outlined in the specific handbooks, which means that if something changes, we don't have to go back and update the policy for that. So it should be more efficient going forward.
Right.
Can I ask questions before? Okay. So has legal counsel looked at this draft of it?
This draft is the one that they provided and then we reviewed and approved.
So I wasn't quite sure the definition here in the first paragraph where it says the district provides equal access to all designated youth groups. What is a youth group?
I would assume,
Any of our groups that
In our
are, there are going to
schools.
be students in
Yeah.
any of our clubs, any of our activities, any groups that we have, that there's not discriminatory practices.
Okay. The reason why I'm asking is I'm just trying to figure out the definition of youth group because I know from, do we use that definition anywhere else in our policies? Because immediately I looked at that and kind of thought, there are a lot of religious youth groups that are called youth groups. So that made me kind of look at that and think, okay, is it talking about that? I wouldn't think it would be. We're talking about student organizations.
Yes.
And so that's just to make sure that everybody's
Yeah, I
kind of
got you.
clear on that, and not something that could potentially be misinterpreted.
I would interpret it as specific to youth groups as opposed to not youth groups, right?
Right.
If it just said designated groups, that would be.
There's a lot of
any group
designated groups in the school.
district. In the school district, this is just youth, that statement.
But
there,
is it I guess part of the thought is it student organizations or is it non-student organizations but still people that are youth?
Well, one of the things, you need to do a first read of the policy itself.
right.
So I'm wondering if, when we get to that point, to ask that, and then, since it's just the first read this evening, to follow up exactly on what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the open question then would be, do we want a qualifying word
Tighten up the-
between, between
Student
designated and
organization.
youth, whether it's school-based or whatever.
Right, because I just didn't understand what designated meant.
Right.
Designated by who? By the superintendent,
And-
by somebody else?
There should be, right, you want this thing to be free of those questions when anybody reads it.
Right.
Understood. Okay.
Especially because it's not just, from what I can understand here, the original just the non-discrimination policy just referenced students, was just about students. So this opens it up to students, parents, employees, and the general public not tolerating discrimination. So it makes it much broader. And so that's just my concern on just making sure we know and understand what it's referencing, as well as all of those people that it's supposed to apply to understand exactly what we're referencing.
That's excellent. Are there any similar questions or points of discussion that people want to get into, or should we do the reading for?
I think it's probably better to do the reading.
Sure.
Fine, read and then if there's any other points of discussion in addition to what Ms. Raymond brought up, let's hit that. Who'd like to start with the reading?
Go ahead.
I'll start, I guess. Non-discrimination and harassment policy, file AC. Foxborough Public Schools does not tolerate discrimination against students, parents, employees, or the general public on the basis of race, color, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, homelessness, religion, age, or immigration status. The Foxborough Public Schools is also committed to maintaining a school environment free of harassment based on race, color, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, pregnancy or pregnancy status, age, or disability. In addition, the district provides equal access to all designated youth groups. Consistent with the requirements of the McKinney-Vento Act, the district also does not discriminate against students on the basis of homelessness. Want to keep going?
Sure.
Or we can switch paragraphs. You want to go?
How about you do this policy and I'll do the next one?
Oh, there we go. Okay, we'll do policy. The superintendent shall designate at least one administrator to serve as the compliance officer for the district's non-discrimination policies in education-related activities, including but not limited to responding to inquiries related to Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Title II of the American with Disabilities Act, the Age Act, MGL, Chapter 76, Section 5, MGL C 151B, and 151C, and 603 CMR 26. Inquiries about the application of Title IX to the district may be referred to the district's Title IX coordinator, to the Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Department of Education, or both. The Foxborough Public Schools policy of non-discrimination will extend to students, staff, the general public, and individuals with whom it does business. No person shall be excluded from or discriminated against in employment, admission to a public school of Foxborough, or in obtaining the advantages, privileges, and courses of study of such public school on account of race, color, sex, gender identity, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, age, homelessness, disability, or immigration status. In addition to designating at least one administrator to handle inquiries regarding the district's non-discrimination policies, the superintendent shall adopt and publish one or more grievance procedures for addressing reports of discrimination, harassment, and retaliation under the protected classes identified in this policy. If an individual interested in filing a complaint that they have been discriminated against because of their race, color, sex, gender identity, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, homelessness, disability, or immigration status, their complaint should be filed in accordance with the district's grievance procedures for discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. The student handbooks and grievance procedures shall identify the name, office address, and telephone number for the compliance officer or officers for the above referenced statutes and this policy, and be posted on the district's website. Legal references, Title VI, 42 USC 2000D 34 CFR 100.3 A and B, EEOA 20 USC 1703F, Title IX, 20 USC 1681, 34 CFR 106.31 and 106.34 and 106.35, Section 504, 29 USC 794, 34 CFR 104.4, Title II, 42 USC 12132, 28 CFR 35.130, IDEA 2004, 20 USC 1400, 34 CFR 300.110, NCLB Title III Part A, Section 3121C, L, and capital C. Title X Part C, SES 721, 722 G4, Mass Constitution, I assume, Amendment, Article 114 MGL C71A, SC C76, S5, 603 CMR, 26.03 is amended by Chapter 199 of the Acts of 2011, MLG C71 370, 42 USC 2000 C, whatever that is, 42 USC's 2000D, same thing, 20 USC 1701, and MGL 71, Section 84. The attorney should have read that.
That was a fabulous job.
Really good job.
I could listen to that all night.
Abbreviation and
Way to go, Mr. Pearson.
I'm not sure I needed to, but I got it all.
No, it's all in there. It's all in there. All right, points of discussion or further review between now and our next meeting and second reading. Does anybody else want to follow up on the point that Ms. Raymond brought up on paragraph 1?
We can certainly get clarification. I do think it means designated use groups, because what we're saying earlier in the policy is that we are making it available to any group regardless of what their position is. So I think it specifically says designated youth groups as designated by the superintendent or the person appointed, and we can certainly get clarity on it, but I think that language is intentional.
I'd just like to understand what the definition of it is.
Yeah, no, certainly, but I think, after, rereading it and listening to Richard read it aloud, I think that is the intent.
So,
And the question would be, do we want to clarify? Sorry, Ms. Raymond, you go ahead.
yeah, I think we want to clarify because
Right.
this is an important policy, and it's something that is going to be looked back at when there's issues, when there's problems, when there's potential lawsuits. So you need to make sure that the language is clear to everyone involved so that there's not any nuances later on.
Is the, and I'm not the one you want wordsmithing this, or anything for that matter, but we're talking about designated school-based youth groups. Is that what you're, does something like that or akin to that?
Right, I mean, the point behind it is, what's the goal? What are we trying to say
School-based
there?
discrimination.
Is it only school?
Right.
Based, is it designated?
That's us.
And the question then becomes is, we can assume it's designated by the superintendent, but it's not necessarily that clear, as to say, we could have somebody come in and say, well, this is a designated youth group by, another definition somewhere
Like the
else.
Scouts are not a designated school-based youth group, but they're a youth group.
Right.
Understood.
So I would say maybe the word helps us. My initial thought was that I don't think a school committee can make a policy for an outside the school district youth group, right? I mean, just as a default. We can't set a policy as a school committee that impacts a youth group in the town of Foxborough.
Well, it's providing equal access.
Yep,
So it's
I
saying
understand.
access
Yep.
to the schools.
Right, I get that.
So that's where, I just
Yeah,
want to make sure
yeah.
we're not opening ourselves up to something where an organization comes in and says, we're discriminating against them because we're not providing them access to the school.
Understood. Yeah, I do understand.
And that could be problematic.
Yeah, I get it.
Like it.
But I do not think, I don't think it is student youth group. I think it is youth groups. I mean, I think that is intentional for that reason. So we can certainly get clarification on that. And the key would be if somebody makes a request for access, the reason if that request is denied by the superintendent or by the designated appointee, then we need to make sure that there's clear reason behind it that doesn't indicate discrimination. So, but I do think this is not intended to say student or groups that are necessarily associated with Foxborough Public Schools may have access to this. We do open our schools up to groups that aren't necessarily student groups or youth groups that are not necessarily associated with Foxborough Public Schools from time to time.
I understand, and that's
Right.
why I'm saying is we just want to make sure that everybody's in agreement and that we're not creating a more
Got it.
complicated issue, but we're clarifying.
Delineating where our responsibility ends.
Correct.
Okay. I understand.
Right.
Can we ask the attorneys to look at that with that lens?
Yeah.
With this question? The question
we
is
should.
good. The question's a very good
Please.
question. And have the attorneys, if they have, if the wording here gets to the end, yeah, I think probably the attorney should look at it.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
With that question, and I do have a couple of other questions.
Please, Adam. That's
So
why we're here.
in just reading through it, I noticed that, so if you just go the sentence before where it talks about free of harassment based on, and it lists all of these
Yep.
issues that it's based on, the listing does not match the listing of tolerate discrimination of the sentence before, and it also doesn't match,
Down
if you
below.
go down to 1, 2,
Paragraph
3,
four?
4, paragraph 4. So is there a reason why they don't match? You've got pregnancy or pregnancy status is, I didn't go through it with a fine tooth comb, but I know right there, that is missing from the first sentence and is missing from the fourth paragraph. Is there a reason why that's different between those? And if so, why?
And then if not,
So, and that was just my question, is there, and there could be a point as to why it is, because there's different designated classes for discrimination versus harassment, and I just want to have a good understanding of why that is.
awesome. Meaning I understand the question. That's worth further explanation. And then that leads me to potentially another half of that question is if there isn't a specific reason for them not being parallel, should we make them parallel?
Well, if there's a reason, we need to understand what that implications are, because it could be a valid reason. I just don't know what that reason is. So without having that knowledge, it's kind of hard to evaluate it. And that's why I was just asking the question. And if this is something that came from a specific source, is just asking, follow up on that piece. Because, my first looking through it is, I would think that all of those areas would be the same throughout.
Yeah, I get it.
No, it's well explained.
Yeah.
I understand the question.
Can you reference it back? I'd love an attorney to reference it back. You say it in the first paragraph, and could you say it as referenced in the initial statement?
Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
Yeah, I understand.
So,
What else?
and then the other question was just looking back at the original non-discrimination
Yep.
policy. We have in that very much kind of the school committee is making a commitment to the community, and it has these listing of, intentions, which is missing from the new policy, and I'm just wondering, what are we losing by taking that out? If anything. Because it's saying here, encourage positive experiences and human values for students and youth and adults, and considering in all decisions made. It's really more of a kind of direction, while this
of
policy, this non-discrimination harassment policy, is much more what I would consider kind of a legal
Right.
reference. Is kind of like, okay, here's the legal basis, versus the original one had that, but it was also a direction from the school board saying, here's what our policy, here's what we want the school department to be doing.
And my interpretation of that's intentional. That's removed because it's intentional. We talk about that first part, our vision, the way that we want to operate as a school committee, and how we want our schools to operate. We talk about that in the other documents that we produce at the beginning, coming out of our retreat every summer. That's the culture and climate of our schools that we want to promote as a school committee and support. By taking that out, none of those things in steps 1 through 6 are really actionable policy things. They are, as you talked about, our vision for what we want. The policy now is much more, this is policy, this is how it operates, this is where you go and reference what the procedures are. So I think that was an intentional.
Just to weigh in, it does put it back to each school's handbook, which in a way is going to give a little bit more of this like, direct to the public policy, where, handbooks will give more bulleted. I'm not on subcommittee, so I don't know, but that's how I read it, sort of. This is where the school committee stands, sort of broad-based, but then putting it to the schools to come up with their own.
So I would understand what you're saying, Sarah. I would just say, have we looked back to see if any of these pieces that's in that non-discrimination piece, are they all referenced back to our goals, to other areas, to the student handbook? I just want to make sure we're not taking something out that doesn't exist also somewhere else, if that's what kind of like, the intent there. That's all.
I understand.
important.
I understand the question.
I understand moving things around and having this be a very kind of like, hey, this is from a legal perspective, we're looking at, this is our policy in regards to people going back and looking at what does the discrimination or harassment policy specifically say about what we're doing and integrating into all of the federal laws and state laws and all of that. I get that. I just want to make sure we're not losing something that we assume is somewhere else.
It's really thoughtful. Thank you.
It's very thoughtful.
And the idea really is to get back to, at a procedural level, as far as school committee, this is to go back to say, this is the procedural piece that you have, on your plate, but really, all of the procedures themselves are being thrown to the superintendent to develop those. And those, if you look through the grievance procedures for Title IX or for civil rights, it is a very lengthy document.
Right, we want to incorporate, not reiterate everything. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Fair enough, yeah.
And then, last thought I had on the third point you brought up, Ms. Raymond, is the listing there of 1 through 6. Those seems like it's, and an ample and useful preamble to most of our policies
Right.
and our functions, you know what I mean? Like it's nicely stated, but,
Which is why.
and then the question is,
I think,
yeah.
I actually do think, they might be the same wording, but I do believe that this is all covered in, when we talk about, I forget the name of the actual document that we agree on and sign off on every summer, but that the intent of that language is covered in that.
Okay.
Just on a quick side note, as I'm reading this, Bill, I think that this policy update, when and if it does pass and we make this, may qualify for MIIA requirements. I don't know if that's something anybody knew about or was thinking about, but just throwing it out there.
Oh, thank you.
And the other thing that your policy subcommittee did do is they looked at the policy that MASC put out, looked at, and the attorney, your attorney also looked at the MASC policy. And this one is more succinct than the MASC policy.
Sure. Well, then, if,
I'm sorry, I had one thing, then it didn't stick out until Richard read it. The last paragraph, do we need to stay, is it student handbook only, or is it also employee handbook?
It's in both. I mean, and
Right.
it references, it'll reference back to the link on the website, to the
Correct.
procedures.
Okay,
Is that kind of where it says grievance procedure, is that
right.
district grievance procedures.
district-wide? Is there a different, I would assume there's a different grievance procedure for employee versus student.
It goes and it lists it all out. There's all kinds of flow charts and forms, and the process is very lengthy now compared to what it has been in the past, because you're having multiple people involved instead of the single investigator model.
So I would say that you're correct. It should say student and employee handbooks and grievance procedures.
Right, that's what that makes me feel better to put that in there.
Okay, then let's, thank you.
Thank you for all the work on this. It's an important policy, so.
All right.
So student and employee handbooks?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I saw it, yeah.
So it's referencing both, because that's, the point is that this isn't just a policy that applies to students, it also applies to employees.
Yeah, yeah.
So then if subcommittee or most likely administration is able to cross-check with council, then would we be ready? And then we could discuss that next meeting on January 3rd and then be prepared to move on to second reading and, or further questions that we have,
We can do it at the next meeting, yeah.
if that's okay.
Or we can
If-
go
if-
again. Yeah, we just could, yeah.
Depending on timeline.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Depending on timeline, so, yeah.
I don't think that is going to be a problem as far as talking with your attorney to get those clarifications and.
And thoughts on it, yeah, thank you. I mean, I do appreciate that we use the MASC, I also appreciate that we use council, we look at other districts, and then we end up making something that makes sense for us. And I appreciate that tradition that you all bring to it as administrators and past committee members, so let's keep that up.
And then the other part of that would be rescinding when you
Yeah.
do come to the next meeting. It's just
We would-
understanding that you would be, if you do the second read and you're all in agreement and vote it, the other action item would be rescinding those other three policies.
And that's, yeah, I was gonna ask that, thank you, that's that's a vote. Like, we should
Yes.
pass a policy and then also rescinding. Excellent, thank you for the work on that, that's a lot of reshuffling.
Can we just say that
Please.
for the next agenda item is referencing those policies in the agenda that we would be rescinding?
Absolutely.
So that everybody can read it ahead of time, so we're not.
And we'll have them in your.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's good, thank you. Ms. Grisha, do you have?
Are you voting to move this one forward for a second reading?
That's where I was gonna ask, do we wanna, pending review of this, do we want to move this along to a second reading? Are we comfortable enough with it to get the answers on those questions? If so, somebody want to move to put this on to a second reading?
I'd like to make a motion to put the,
You got it.
the non-discrimination and harassment, file AC, to a second reading.
Thank you. We'll second.
think Michelle can second.
Michelle can second.
You want to second that?
Michelle seconds.
I can second it too.
No, but it's better to.
Second it.
Thank you. All in favor? That's 5-0-0. Again, thank you for the work.
Can I
Everyone.
make a request? As we do this and we come up with the other policies we're going to rescind,
You want to read more?
no. Could we get those maybe a little bit in advance? Our next meeting is the January 3rd. If we grab everything on the Friday of that weekend, I mean, should we give ourselves a little bit of a runway? Is that possible?
We can send those out as informational to you tomorrow, so
Yeah.
you have that.
I think that might be wise. Let's get them to us early so that we can kind of have them in front of us, as opposed to just cramming them in that weekend, you know, it might be valuable for
Yeah,
us.
because I mean, they're all on the website anyway. It's just a matter of Janet putting it together and sending it to you in an email, and can
That's
send those
kind of
right
you.
out to you
Thank you,
tomorrow.
Do you mind? Yeah, thank
I
you. Thank
appreciate
you very
that.
much. I
Thank
probably
you.
could have gone to the website myself too, but I
It's
appreciate
easier
it.
to get it in a
Yeah,
package
great.
this way.
Good, and then we'll have the whole thing in our heads together.
All right. Well, that's wonderful.
Thanks.
Regrettably, the next policy has fewer legal references.
I picked wisely.
Pretty good.
Let's move on.
ahead.
Let's move on to policy JH regarding student absences. Mr. Canfield, would you like to do a reading?
I will. Dr. Burdos, do you want to set this up at all? I know
Oh,
this is
sure.
Mr. Donovan's attempt to make
Sure.
this more,
So-
to provide clarification and
Oh, yeah, this is brought by Mr.
So really, the read, when Rob goes through to read it, he's going to be inserting one word. And where
Okay.
where parents provide explanation for an absence.
For written.
We want to insert the word written.
Got it.
And the reason for that, just to kind of give the context here, is it's setting it up in the future for when you think about excused absences versus unexcused absences. As an example, if a student's going on a college visit, you know, they're writing, it's a college visit, they have that, and so then it's understood. If a student's out sick, you know, they're out sick, you've got that. But we need a written document instead of just a phone call that's coming in to explain what the absence is. And again, in the future, it's a matter of thinking about, well, what is excused versus unexcused?
Right. And just having thorough, consistent communication.
Can we waive the reading if it's only one word altered?
We can waive second reading.
Okay.
But yeah, I just wanted to ask a question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, then that's good.
Okay.
Probably not.
It's been
I'm
a
ready.
while since you appeared on stage.
I'm ready, yeah.
This is a good question.
Okay. So, file JH, student absences. Regular and punctual school attendance is essential for success in school. Parents of children attending our schools have the responsibility to ensure that their children attend school regularly in accordance with state law. Students may be excused temporarily from school attendance for the following reasons. 1, illness or quarantine. 2, bereavement or serious illness in family. 3, weather so inclement as to endanger the health of the child. 4, for observance of major religious holidays. A child may also be excused for other exceptional reasons with approval of the school administrator. A student's understanding of the importance of day-to-day schoolwork is an important factor in the shaping of his or her character. Parents can help their children by refusing to allow them to miss school needlessly. Accordingly, parents will provide a written explanation for the absence or tardiness of a child. This will be required in advance of an absence when possible. In instances of chronic or irregular absence reportedly due to illness, the school administration may request a physician statement certifying such absences to be justifiable. Student Absent Notification Program. Each principal will notify a student's parent guardian within 3 days of the student's absence in the event the parent or guardian has not informed the school of the absence. Each principal or designee shall make a reasonable effort to meet with any student and that student's parent or guardian who has missed 5 or more unexcused school days. A school day shall be equal to 2 or more class periods in the same day in a school year. The meeting shall be to develop action steps to improve student attendance and shall be developed jointly by the principal or designee, the student, and the student's parent or guardian. The parties may seek input from other relevant school staff and/or officials from relevant public safety, health, and human service, housing, and nonprofit agencies. Dropout prevention. Any student who has not graduated from high school will not be considered permanently removed from school unless the principal or his or her designee has sent a notice to the student and the student's parent or guardian. The notice shall be sent within 5 days of the 10th consecutive day of absence and shall offer at least 2 dates and times within the next 10 days for an exit interview with the superintendent or designee, the student, and the student's parent or guardian. The notice shall be in both English and the primary language of the home, if applicable. The notice shall include contact information for scheduling the exit interview and shall indicate the parties shall reach an agreement on the date, time of the interview within the 10-day time frame. The time frame may be extended at the request of the parent or guardian, and no extension for the meeting date shall exceed 14 days. The superintendent or designee may proceed with any interview without a parent or guardian present, provided the superintendent has documented a good faith effort to include the parent or guardian. The superintendent or designee shall convene a school staff to participate in the exit interview and shall provide information to the student and, if applicable, the student's parent or guardian on the detrimental effects of early withdrawal from school, the benefits of earning a high school diploma, and the alternative education programs and services available to the student. Legal references, Mass General Law 76-1, 76-1B, 76-16, 76-18, and 76-20.
That was so easy. That ending was like so easy.
Nice.
Did my homework.
I know you did. Good job.
All right. Are there any things, aspects of this people want to question, clarify, discuss?
The only change is that one word, or those two words.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then, with that, if the committee is comfortable moving this on to Phase 2, second reading, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to move on to the second reading of student absences, file JH.
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
It's 500.
Everyone points at him.
And we'll move this on to a second reading. If folks are comfortable, we'll slate that for next meeting on January 3rd. Thank you. Excellent. Next up, oh my goodness, we're 2 minutes ahead. Preliminary discussion of the proposed FY24 budget. Mr. Yukna, Dr. Berdos? and-
I'll start it off a little bit, but I think the majority, if we're going to have Bill do the presenting here, but to thank Sarah and Michelle as far as our subcommittee and coming in and going through all of the different documents with us and the questions that were asked, really good ones. As far as the timeline here, being that we had that subcommittee meeting on the 8th already, we also already had our meetings with the town, 2 meetings that took place in November, and then the joint meeting that we had as well with the revenue forecast for the future. This evening is marking our preliminary discussion on the budget. As you know, we'll have a couple more meetings to discuss and go back with any questions that you have or any additional information. And then we do not know at this point in time the AdCom meeting date, but we do know that we will have our budget request to the finance director on January 3rd. We have our school committee meeting on January 3rd. That was the one that was changed from the 10th, just as a calendar note there. And that on the 24th will be the public review and your vote, where it has to be voted by the end of January. And that will go before town meeting, which is scheduled for the 8th of May.
Dr. Berdos?
Yes.
Does the town administration, to give you a sense of when AdCom will have all the budgets out to the advisory committee? And then the other ones are like their book that they get?
I don't know that date
That's
because
fine.
we're doing it later this year than
Yeah.
we've ever done before. Bill,
Okay.
do you have any idea?
They said they would be publishing before the end of January, so.
Okay, that's fine. And that to your mind, that doesn't put a kink in our timeline?
No, we're ahead of them.
Yeah, well, I figure we're fine.
Well
Jeez,
done.
we're fine.
We'll
Yeah,
start,
okay,
so.
but, okay, thanks. Sorry, Dr. Berdos, thank you for entertaining that.
So I think just to frame it, the overall message is not surprising to all of you sitting here and what we've continued to focus on, which is providing a high level of service for our students and the supports that are necessary for them to continue to be successful, adjusting to our shifting student populations that we have when we think about related needs, particularly in the area of special education, and our work with our plan for success and co-teaching and providing those opportunities for more inclusive practices to take place. The philosophy itself is, it's right in line with our historical approach from the past, and that it is one that really speaks to that, that we have a strong commitment to education, and as you have been all along in supporting education and the programs that we have currently and maintaining those excellent programs are really what is prioritized here. You've got the 4 pillars of success that you're very familiar with from our plan. It is aligned to all of those when it comes to the supports for students, when we think about the courses, when we think about meeting their needs from a English language population, from a special education population, from technology, all of those things. And you'll see some shifts when we get to that a little bit more. It is focusing on maintaining reasonable class sizes. It focuses on, in addition to the district's academic and strategic initiatives, but also looking to address increasing costs that continue in special education. When we see them when it comes to facilities and infrastructure, addressing those costs as well and some adjustments. You'll hear about software and licensing and the implications that come from technology and how curriculum instruction, when we think about programs and the changes to licensing programs, in addition to facility costs. And then importantly, that it allows us to meet all that we have to meet when it comes to the Department of Education, and everything is outlined. And the last thing is that it also, we've talked about a lot the different positions that are supported by these grants that are sunsetting. And it is assuming these particular positions because of what is outlined in our plan for success, the supports that we need for students, and we'll be talking about how those particular faculty positions that were supported by state and federal grants that are going away, that we are prioritizing those within this budget. So the budget process itself, Bill, I'll let you take it from there.
So as we've described in the past, basically, we develop the budget from a ground zero up. We know all of, obviously, the staff we currently have. We develop what the requirements will be with that staff going forward. There are positions that, may be eliminated over time. There are positions that may be added over time, all based on what the student needs are and the curriculum base that we're trying to accomplish. Part of the budgeting assumptions are that, and we've had this conversation year after year, is that while we don't know who's retiring June 30th of this year, we have to assume that there will be retirements and that the people retiring versus the people that we would hopefully hire at the lower ends of the scale, bringing them in, would have a reduction. The town has accepted a $125,000 assumption on an annual basis, so we build that into the budget as well for those retirements. And as Dr. Burrow said, the changes to any kind of outside resources through grants or revolving accounts, we have to highlight those and make assumptions based on that as well. We kind of passed.
Did I skip one?
So the increase that's being presented in this budget is $1,184,581, which is 3%. The Board of Selectmen's suggestion, or the town manager's suggestion, is a 3% level services and limited enhancements. That would equal $1,187,442. So you can see we're slightly under it, but we're within the ballpark of what they've asked for. There's a lot of moving pieces here, and I'll give you an encapsulated thing at the end. But basically, what you're seeing here is the number of changes that we make within staff on an annual basis. I think this is meant to highlight in a lot of ways how we are looking at each one of those positions as we move forward and what its needs are within the curriculum base. We have had to make a small adjustment within the finance department, basically to cover the workload in there. We were paying the same amount basically in overtime, so we've gone from part-time, a few part-time employees that were 0.75 up to one case of full-time and one that was a 0.85 up to a full-time. So that's the adjustment there. Again, financially, it's pretty much the same to us, but it's just actually giving them full-time positions. Changes in educational assistance. We have, over the last couple years, built into the program where we're looking to go to the inclusive model, having more highly qualified staff. And in doing so, in some places, we've removed ed assistants to cover the cost of that, and in some cases, it's because the ed assistant was no longer needed based on changes within the student body. So you'll see a number of spots where we're making changes from from a delivery point of what we actually need. We don't just, because we have the body this year, bring the body forward to next year. In many of these cases for ed assistants, to be honest with you, we have not been able to hire. So these aren't people that we're looking to let go. It's positions that, since the pandemic, have been nearly impossible to hire. So there's, to my knowledge, nobody in this grouping that is somebody that's a hired individual today that won't be here next year unless they choose to.
Okay.
So you'll see that part of ours is to reduce in the educational assistance and add a few new teachers in that model to enhance the special needs programs within the school. We also have a custodian increase of 0.5 at the borough. We're at 2.5 currently. It's a 60,000 square foot building, similar to the IGO, which is a 3-person staffed. We thought we might be able to get away with it, and we tried, and we went through a period of time with the 2.5. But to be honest with you, the square footage of the building and doing the nightly cleaning throughout the entire building, and especially with the increased, emphasis on cleaning with all the illnesses and post-COVID still concerns about spreading of germs and stuff. It's really going to require 3 to do that. We also have opened up the borough to outside youth organizations for use of the gym at night, so that puts a little bit more emphasis on the cleaning of that wing of the building, in a period of time. We have a number of changes on the elementary level, the borough and the IGO, as far as how we rotated world language teachers. Again, that's to fill the need based on the use within the students' programs. So you have a 0.4 reduction, increase in the borough, and a 0.3 reduction at the IGO, minor change. We have a math interventionist that basically we could not, it was actually a 0.5 math interventionist and a 0.5 SPED position, and it was pretty much impossible to find the combination person. So what we've done is we've morphed it into a full-time math interventionist and eliminated the SPED position that was the other 0.5. So you'll see that one down further in the list as we go down. The high school, again, is doing under the inclusion model, looking to reduce 2 of the EA positions, again, that aren't filled today, to hire an inclusion teacher as part of their change to the curriculum in advancing it to be more of a college-prone, preparatory system, and enhance what the kids are able to achieve within the classroom versus being in pullouts or in other scenarios.
Bill, is there, in a situation where we're looking to change the learning model from more ed assistants to SPED certified teachers, what's the trade-off point, the financial equivalent?
It's a little over 2. It's like probably about 2.2 ed assistants to a teaching position.
Thanks.
Initially it would be less than 2, but over time it's going to be slightly over 2. So
that's kind of like the.
That's why we're kind of we look at that as the base point.
Thank you.
And again, in some cases, if we couldn't afford to eliminate a ed assistant, not in this particular year's model, but we needed the teaching position, we would be here because it's one of the things that we would be strongly pushing for.
Right.
The continued push as far as special education, you'll see under that line for the 0.2 at the high school world language change. Basically, these are all SPED positions now that are based on the programs that we're looking to maintain or improve. So, in the pre-K ed assistant, that's a student-based requirement that we have. Again, hoping that we'll be able to fill the position as far as that goes. The Borough special ed teacher, again, we're doing a swing there for 2 ed assistants for that special ed teacher to advance that. Taylor School, we have an educational assistant that no longer is required within the school, so that's the reduction. .5, sped teacher, was the one I mentioned above as far as the reduction there that was added for a interventionist. The Hearn PAVE program, this program basically is an extension of the original PAVE program there, and it's basically to help us be able to provide a curriculum for a number of kids that would otherwise need to go out because we wouldn't be able to service them. We feel that this has always been our better choice when possible to keep kids within the district, within their cohort of friends, and obviously give them the best educational opportunity we can by having the right staff for it. The high school one is a curriculum revision in the way they're going to actually deliver the program. As I said, we have a number of ed assistants on the high school level that we're not in need of right now, and from transitioning from last year to next, or this year to next year. So there's about 4.5 ed assistants there, unfilled positions. A .2 increase in a speech therapist. Again, that's a caseload base. Each specialist within the district is analyzed for who they're servicing on an annual basis, and we kind of balance that against what the appropriate level of students that a individual can actually manage during their day's work and still give the services that each kid needs. So in this case, we need .2 more for speech. The high school interventionist, we were unable to fill anyway. It was a grant funded position, so we're going to eliminate that one. Part-time nurses, basically we had that under grant funded. We've gone up to 5.8 in nurses. We have 1.4 at each of the 2 bigger schools. The big push there was to obviously have the additional services during the midday lunch times, when many of the kids need to have checks for diabetes and other things. That accomplished that. The grant gave us a little bit more money, and it was very effective during COVID to be able to, because even some of the nurses could even get sick at times. So having that .5 that we could rotate between buildings was helpful then, but we think we can, the other priorities are above that at this point. And another health grant, 1.0 ed assistant that we're going to eliminate. So this gets you a reduction overall from last year's budget of 6.025 FTEs. And I think that just kind of shows you to what level granularly we take it down to get it. But as Dr. Burdos, has pointed out, even with that, we are still funding 5.5 positions, as you'll see, of grants. So these are the positions that we feel, especially coming out of the whole period with COVID and the interactions with the students and the higher needs that we've had, that grants were very effective in helping us deal with. The first one actually just is again a student base. Our ELL population has increased, and having the right caseload for that for the what we'll have is 3 full-time to be able to manage that seems to be the right thing. We've gone from 2.5 social workers, the 1.5 that's here got us up to 4. Again, they're working extremely hard to deal with the students' issues and needs at this point in time, as well as families around that. We had one special ed teacher at the Adjourn, again, part of our program things that we needed to, we feel we need to keep. A .5 therapist, occupational therapist, what we had was a previous position which was not a certified position as a CODA. We've moved that to an OT position, and basically it required the equivalent of another .5 to cover what an OT would cost, versus what we've gotten out of that is significantly higher than what we were able to get previously under the model, plus with the needs of the kids. Obviously, as you know, during COVID, one of the things that we did was we went to a one-to-one district, and which put a lot of pressure on our IT department. Again, through the grants over the last couple of years, we were fortunate enough to be able to hire someone to help us fill that. We currently have one person that is full-time, basically fixing laptops. And, you know, it's, again, we were busy without that as far as dealing with the network issues, dealing with, you know, the classroom issues, but now we have to maintain those computers. We are fortunate that our IT staff under Aaron Heyer has gotten his staff certified so that they can actually do the repair work under warranty work. And all we have to do is file for the parts replacement. That does a couple things for us. If we eliminate this position, then many of these computers will have to go out to outside service groups, and it takes time to get them out there, to get them back and get them in the kids' hands. In cases, many of the cases, we're able to turn these things around in the same day, you know, assuming we have the right parts to do it, and we do stock parts, basically. They've given us some ability to do that through the warranty process as well. And then we had 2.2 teachers that we were effectively funding through grants that were sped teachers that we have now elevated through our process as full-time, and will lose the grant funding. So 5.5 positions previously grant funded, no longer grant funded, are within the budget, and we are still down 6 FTEs year over year. You know, I think the general concept of the budget is again, service-based staffing adjustments, as you just saw. We literally are going building by building, operation by operation, and curriculum-based by curriculum-based to determine what staffing is needed to go as we move forward. We continue to try to have the highest level of staffing we can, even though we have to have adjustments from state and federal grants, which are not consistent year to year. We try to, at best, as you'll see, in most of our expense lines are consistent with last year, but you will see a few that will stick out, and we'll kind of give you those lists as well. Most of them are around the bigger items. They're around the utilities, they're around special education. Some minor ones are around just supplies. As we all know, inflation has hit everything we've done. And we've been able to manage that to a degree, but there's a few areas that we're adding a few dollars to try to survive through that. And again, our district-wide facilities, we were fortunate under the ESSER grants to have a lot of resources when it came to PPE products, when it came to cleaning, filters, and all that. We feel that at this point, still, we want to maintain the advanced level of filter changes that we've been doing for fresh air within the buildings. And so, again, we're going to have to pick up some of that cost just so that as the grants go away, we can keep it there. And again, just continue to monitor the facilities themselves. So again, the major components, as we said, were, you know, the 6.025 reduction. The larger expenses, there's a few that are a couple thousand or less. You know, the 3 elementary schools, basically, their supply lines are in total being increased by $9,500. What we did in that was partly look at the equity between the 3 buildings based on the enrollment to make sure that there was a similar amount of money for each school to operate it under its supply requirements. Out-of-district tuitions, you know, an increase of about $42,000. Technology, you know, licensing, you'll see a reduction in this one area of about $39,000, but you're going to see an increase in another area, which we will describe down below. Transportation and fuel, we are doing okay. Obviously, we've gotten hit this year much harder. Diesel was at $5 last week when we made our payments on that, was the highest we've ever seen. But that's all starting to come back a little, so we're estimating at a little bit lower level, you know, than what's running today, and trying to cover the fuel cost for basically all of our buses and our facilities vehicles. The utility cost basically is under electric. Electric has been our biggest gainer. The town has put together programs that basically take our contracts out 3 years, but The last contract that we renewed last year has an increase in it, so obviously we're seeing that. We also saw and continue to see, again, as long as we maintain the level of fresh air and other things that we're trying to do within the building, that we're using more electricity than we would have pre-COVID. Again, I think it's too early to make any kind of revisions back to the world as it used to be. So I think the cost is well served to try to protect all of the children and staff that we have. Contracted services is really probably the one major inflationary area that we're getting hammered on. And that, when we say contracted services, as you know, we go out to bid every year. In some cases, we are able to bid for 3 years out, but it's all for the HVAC systems, electric, plumbing, generators, just security, a number of different areas. And their increases over the last couple of years have been pretty significant. Again, their manpower has gone up price-wise. Their goods, as far as their materials, have gone up. And those contracts basically are labor plus materials at cost contracts. So that's why you see a fairly large increase there, probably one of the biggest we've ever seen, with $75,000. The curriculum, it used to be, we referred to it as the textbook adoption line previously, okay? I think we all know we don't buy textbooks like we used to. So we've kind of revised the name to be more reflective of what we're actually doing. It's actually a curriculum and program adoption line, and what's changed and what's gotten much more expensive in this, in the old days, it was you bought a book and that's all you did. Now what you're doing is you may be getting a series of books for the classrooms, but you're also getting all the online resources, that same book online, so that the kids don't have to carry it back and forth. So we're facing a lot more in licensing fees for those program adoptions. So what used to be an annual review of about $75,000 is now running well over $100,000 when we do 1 or 2 programs. This year we got science and technology, but in each year we try to do 2 of them. The secondary line underneath that, though, which is our bigger issue, really is, and a lot of this was covered for grants over the last couple of years, and a lot of this is also not just the textbook adoption, but it is the fact that we're 1-to-1. So that your licenses now are for every student, every teacher, not buying 50 books, but you're buying 200 licenses for that class or for that grade. And so what we're in a cycle now of is basically tracking what our recurring costs are on an annual basis for those licenses and for any of the additional programming, professional development that comes along with that adoption in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th year. And right now, what we're looking at is just about $92,000 for next year to cover what we've done in the last couple of years over this, and what we'll have to do for next year as far as the adoption goes. As I said, there's a number of smaller, minor changes that in total equal about $28,000. And then a request was brought forward to us, which we met and talked to the subcommittee about, and we've gotten additional information on. And that was for the schools to participate in the funding of an SRO on our side, meaning we would basically, they would charge us this for it. So the charter school already participates and puts in 0.5 for one of the SROs as well. What the chief has done, and this year has been the largest increase, but basically has 3 patrolmen and women that are involved in the schools daily, plus a sergeant. Typically, we've had in the past only 2. And that's really kind of pushed his resources now to not being able to do what he does, but he considers that the schools are a priority for the police department, but the cost now is at other programs he has to operate within the town. And we felt, quite honestly, that mirroring what the charter school is doing is reasonable, and at this point we feel we can afford it within the budget, And that basically gives him one that's paid for by the two schools, and then whatever other efforts he has to put in basically comes out of his budget side.
Is that, Bill, is that a typical, whether you know or not, like a funding split with?
I think quite honestly, it depends on the district you're in. Some districts actually
Sure.
fund the entire SROs within their school budget. And some districts, did like we did where we funded nothing in the past. I think this is kind of it's a happy medium at this point. Again, it also, not only does it put us having a little skin in the game, but it also makes it, when we call for issues, a little bit more supportive as to the fact that we are also part of the program as well. So, and I look at it, we have done as a town and departments, we charge town departments for things like facilities and IT and other things like that because we monitor and run that whole gamut. So I kind of look at it as there's two sides to this whole equation where if we are truly as a town going to work together and support each other, then there is support between departments too for different resources that need to be had. And again, this is a resource for us as a school district and a school community to support the kids that are in need as well as to support the schools when there is a need. So.
And I think that's the key part there is it's an expense,
Right.
but it's also the partnership that we have and all of the support that we have that's far above a 0.5 position. That's just, again, showing the partnership that's there and that collaborative nature of how we operate as a town.
No, it seems very fair. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Comparison we do year over year kind of shows the increase for the FY24 budget over the FY23. You have a little bit of a history here from FY15 forward. Again, the 3% is what was published or pronounced at the finance meeting the other day with the Board of Selectmen. And we will stay within what their recommendation is. Population change, again, we're still on a slight downward trend, not significant, but our belief is that we will be down a few more for next year. Really depends on what happens with some of these developments that they're now kind of pushing around town. I think we're in good shape in every one of our buildings as far as if anything does come at us increase-wise, we have the ability and we have the class sizes that we can manage with that kind of a change.
And the other piece there too, when you look at our out-of-district numbers, that's a really important piece when we think about the programming and all of the work that's been done and the special educators that Bill was talking about before. By having highly qualified special educators, when we think about our PAVE program or our TEAM program, that's allowing us to keep students in the least restrictive environment here in the district instead of sending them out. And then you can see that reflected in those numbers there.
Right. And one point that wasn't on one of these slides at this point, but I think is extremely important for you to understand. Corey's done a great job with his staff as far as developing these programs and working through it. You can see, obviously, we're going from a high of 38 back down to 28 out of district. I think families appreciate the fact that their students are able to stay within the district, number one. But number two, what we're also facing, and even though we're going up by 42,000 in our tuition, out of district tuition for next year, we are actually getting hit with a 10% increase in our BICO tuitions and a 14% increase, which is being dictated by the state, who's doing the approval on the private school tuition rates, which by itself, those two numbers are, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's already incorporated in our numbers. We've been on top of it. We've all, complained to the state on the fact that they're even willing to entertain such high increases. 14%. But we've seen, and I've talked to you about this in the past, we've had some programs that have gone individually into the state and gotten 20%, 25%, where the rest of them all stayed the same. This is the whole group.
On their own timetable.
It's coming across. And so it's I don't want to say it's an out of control, but it's not one that we have control on. And so we are, obviously, we've talked to our legislators, we have
Written
pushed.
letters to them, to both.
Right.
Jay Barrows and Paul Feeney. And the Massachusetts Superintendent's Association is advocating against this as well with this 14% increase.
But it's highly likely that it will get passed. So, as you know, our budget also has a component that some school districts and towns don't do. We think it's the right way to build a budget. So our budget's an all-in budget. What that refers to is the fact that any money that we receive in grants from revolving accounts or the circuit breaker are already built into this budget. So you're seeing that expense in total. And then what we do is reduce our request from the town by what we receive in these grants and revolving accounts and circuit breakers. The one thing that is saving this budget and allowing us to keep those positions that we noted that were grant funded previously, because we've lost, as you can see, nearly $500,000 in all those ESSER grants and health grants and stuff that aren't coming forward for next year, is the fact the circuit breaker has been greatly increased. One of the things they did was that they have always had a requirement for us to submit for our transportation of these out-of-district. Now, transportation for out-of-district, as you see in the budget's over $800,000 to transport these kids on a daily basis. The state always said that they were going to kick in, and just like they did with the tuition side, and have a reimbursement. They haven't done it until now. And they finally came up with, for this year, it's $363,000 that we're going to get reimbursed for last year's expenses, which will basically help us in making that grant change. And they also have increased, to a small degree, the circuit breaker value on tuitions. So that's you're seeing a change from circuit breaker last year at just under $800,000 to just over $1.2 million. That's, quite honestly, the only thing that's allowing us to keep those positions that we believe are critical to the kids' needs at this point, without which we would have had to, quite honestly, make more cuts to stay within the limitations of the budget.
That would have been your staff.
This is just a quick pie graph so you can see how we spend the money. Very similar to last year. General education is 54.25% of our total budget. Special education is 28.19% of the total budget. And then the smaller areas, biggest one, which is plant and operation, is 7.02%. Transportation is 2.93%. Central administration is 2.76%. Technology is 3.08%. And athletics is 1.77%. So it's just kind of a quick visual as to, the majority of our money is going directly into the classrooms and supporting the curriculum and the programs.
And then as we move forward, it's obviously, we're going to continue to review it as we do, and then look for any revenue changes, any questions that you have. We have the next meeting on the 3rd, as we said before, as far as to go back. But any other additional information or questions that you have, we can talk about that now and then again then as well. And, the important deadline is that 24th of January to vote it, because that's by policy. You need to vote it by that time period.
Right.
One of the things that I wanted to add, and I should have added earlier, that long list of all the changes in personnel boils down to 5 lines in total. It boils down to 0.375 in the business office as an increase, 0.5 in facilities, 1.9 in teachers, because there were pluses and minuses in that, 8.5 educational assistants as a reduction, a 0.5 nurse reduction, and a 0.2 speech. So that whole page of things really boils down to, just a handful of things that we're actually addressing. But again, you can see it's
Where it's coming from.
by building, by program, by requirement. So.
Can I, go ahead, I have a question.
I don't have a question, I just have a comment, but go ahead. Go first.
Yeah, question. Quick reminder for anybody who might be listening. Circuit breaker, is there, what types of things have circuit breakers? Is there two? It's just the one, and it's overall sped costs,
Yep.
right? And that's when it's based. Just if you could just remind folks.
So the
including
way
me.
circuit breaker operates is that effectively under the state, it's additional funding above the Chapter 70 money that comes to us. It comes to us the year after you've spent it. So what they do is they analyze our June 30th filings as to everything we've spent. The Special Education Department basically completes an entire document of all of our expenses by student, which includes some expenses that we would do in-house as well, but mostly it's the out-of-district tuitions and the out-of-district transportation. And under the program, which changes from year to year, I believe last year's base amount, if I'm not mistaken, was around $46,000, that they assume the first $46,000 of that out-of-district tuition is borne by the town. Anything above that, they're willing to do a split on. Most of our out-of-district programs, unless it's through BICO, which is probably the more affordable action, it's the closest, obviously, transportation-wise and everything. Most of them are, in the BICO, are slightly above that 46, so there's only a limited amount that's actually circuit breaker eligible. But then again, you have the larger programs where they can run anywhere from $100,000 to $400,000.
Right.
And again, getting a percentage back from the state, which is 75% last year, is a fairly good percent, that they'll take above that 46,000, they'll take it, and they'll take 75 they'll fund, and 25 we fund. So it's a way of providing each district with funding back based on a specific need versus just throwing money into the Chapter 70 and then hoping that one district didn't get destroyed because they had a high level of need versus another district that didn't. So it's probably the fairest vehicle you can have. Obviously, every district would like it to be 100%, but it's not going to be funding-wise. And they basically, that percentage is driven by how much money do they have in their pool versus how much demand has been sent to them. So some years that could be 70%, some years that could be 73%, some years it's 75%. It's based on the pool of money that's in the state budget.
And by the legislature increasing that, allowing that 14+% increase, does that increase the base?
It's going to increase them paying 75% more of that 14%. So we'll be paying 25% of it.
Okay, thank you.
But again, we're going to get back a year after we've spent it. So
Right, and that's always a budgeting thing that you have to, I guess, project out, right?
Right.
Because, we plan ahead, but we're getting
in arrears.
Yeah, we're getting reimbursed in arrears.
And again, we've had this conversation before. What the town has done, which I think for the educational side is probably one of the smartest moves to keep it consistent year to year, is we, on almost all of our accounts, we don't use the money in the year we receive it, we use it in the year after.
Right.
So we effectively have a one-year cushion. If we were to get totally destroyed by something, we actually have a year's worth of time to figure out how to deal with it.
Like the one year that we had 5 out-of-district
Move-ins.
students move in over the summer. We had that one summer, 5
Right, that's right.
out-of-district students.
So it gives us the ability to kind of shift and adjust and work with, versus if we were spending it at the same time we got it, then we would basically have to go back to town. We have never gone back to town to deal with any of those issues. We've always had to do it, within our budget process because of the way we're allowed to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So my only comment was thank you all. I appreciate all of the detail. I appreciate the creativity. I certainly appreciate that we have a budget that stays within the guidelines the town set, but we are continuing to improve the already high quality services and education that we provide our students by the creative movement around of the model and staffing for that. So it's really quite remarkable, in my opinion, that what the work that's gone into this. So thank you.
I think, we owe a lot to the rest of the school administration, because obviously we sit down and discuss this, ad nauseum, as far as what needs to be done, how are we going to deal with the grant issues, what are we going to do with this? And I think each one thoughtfully, puts in their 2 cents as to what their needs are within their building, but also, understands that the other buildings have needs too. So I think it's a very, congenial environment when we get together. Everybody knows what the goal is, and there's going to be give and take as we go, so.
And I appreciate just, I've said this before, but in different ways, that the level of communication that you hearken to, Dr. Berdos and Mr. Yukna, we were talking, even as a committee, I know you were talking about it as admin teams long before it, but even back in July, when we had our annual retreat, we were talking about looking ahead at this, and I really appreciate that you and your building leaders and curriculum specialists have gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, program by program, to look at, see what we can reasonably afford to retain that is going to provide the most impact for kids. And I'm pleased to see that there are some retentions here, given that the impact that you and your staff have said that they've had. So I think that's really heartening. Comments moving forward? Thank you. And I also thank, because I didn't earlier, members of our policy subcommittee for taking the time, because I know it's a high meeting season, and I know, Mr. Yukna, that you're at every single one of them, as you are, Dr. Barrow, so I appreciate all the work that you all put in for it. All right, so we can look forward to discussing this further questions at the next few meetings. Please do come with that.
And as we've always said, obviously, we'd like to make your meetings as productive as possible. So if in going through the details that you have with you now, you find any issues that you'd like to have, more information on, if you let us know before that, it would be very helpful so that we can pull together whatever that information is to give you what you need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And speaking from personal experience, asking questions, they know the information backwards and forward, and they can get you anything with a little heads up. Okay, well, if committee members are ready to move on, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, vote on the MOA for the Foxborough Education Association clubs and activities that we have in our packet. Dr. Berdos, Mr. Yukna, do you want to intro, or I can to you?
Jump in here, then Bill can add any detail. This is the exact same thing that you did at the end of the school year.
Yep.
Because we have really delineated in the contract all of the clubs and activities at the high school level. And in order for MTRS, for our teachers to have them as pensionable, they need to be listed out. At the middle school level, they're not, unless it's like the musical. And so by having them listed, it allows it to be pensionable, so it's advantageous for our teachers. And this is just listing that out again, and it's, since we have a new contract, it's do this for the next 3 years. Because the one that you did before was for the previous 3-year contract.
Lovely.
Anything else to add, Bill?
No, that's truly all it is.
Folks, do any committee members have any questions or follow-up with that? If not, this is something we do need to vote to approve. So I would entertain a motion to look at this.
I'll make a motion that we approve the addendum to Appendix A of the collective bargaining agreement for the middle school clubs and activities for fiscal years 23 through 25.
Thank you, Mr. Canfield.
I'd like to second.
Thank you, Mr. Donnie. All in favor? That is approved, 500. Thank you for the work on that and buttoning that up. Next, we have some donations to look at and vote on. Who would like to introduce, if anyone?
So I'll do the first one. The Iorio Charitable Foundation actually is a family, I believe it's a grandfather's company who basically has been following their grandchild through our school district and has made an award if not annually, pretty close to the buildings in which the child was in. So this is a very generous donation of $7,000 to support the high school from the Iorio Charitable Foundation, to be used by the principal, as seen fit.
That's
Can I
excellent.
ask a quick clarifying question?
Yes.
Are we making motions for each individual donation, or are they collective?
We should make them for each individual.
Good, fair enough. If we're ready, I'd like to make a
Please.
motion to accept with gratitude the donation of $7,000 to Foxborough High School by the Iorio Foundation.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. All in favor? It's accepted 500 with gratitude. Thank you, Iorio Charitable Foundation. That's very generous.
The Foxborough Soccer Club, as you know, we're very fortunate in town to have a number of sponsoring groups under all of our sports. And in some cases, they feel that they want to enhance the coaching with additional staff, and they have raised money to basically support that. So in this case, this is the association funding a position of the assistant boys soccer coach for $2,000 for the fall season.
Thank you.
It's your turn.
I just did it.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept with gratitude the donation from the Foxborough Soccer Club for $2,000 for the assistant boys soccer coach.
A second.
All in favor? That's accepted with gratitude. Thank you to the Foxborough Soccer Club and to our coaches.
Similarly, the Foxborough Field Hockey Boosters Club is doing the same thing for an assistant coach for $2,000.
Lovely.
I move to accept the Foxborough Field Hockey Boosters Club donation of $2,000 for the assistant field hockey coach.
I'll second that.
All in favor? That is also accepted with gratitude, 500. Thank you to the Foxborough Field Hockey Booster Club. Excellent.
And the final one, as you all know, we just had a theater production at the high school. There was a group of parents that got together as a boosters club, did some fundraising, and they're supporting the efforts of that production with a donation of $3,736.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept with gratitude the Foxborough High Theater Boosters donation of $37.36 to Foxborough Theater.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? That is accepted with much gratitude, 500. Thank you to the FHS Theater Boosters. With that, we move on to other matters. Ms. Ladani, do you have anything?
I do. I have a couple of different things. First, we just had funding come through and just announced that at the Booth Fields, there will now be a pavilion. It's going to be named the Deb Giardino Pavilion, and it will be available to everybody, and we'll be breaking ground on that in the spring, and that's named after Deb Giardino, who, the Board of Rec chose her because of her many years of service to the town.
That's lovely.
So that's coming this spring for everyone to enjoy. And then Renee just wanted to let everybody know space is still open for the vacation camps in December, and we still are looking for volunteers. Just as a side note, the Community Warriors Club, run by Ms. Keller, has also, we've sort of bridged between them. They do volunteer work in the town, separate from National Honor Society. They're just a wonderful group of volunteer-focused students. So they've actually gotten in touch with the recreation, so they're stepping up to do some volunteering too. So we're very fortunate, and as always, I commend all of our students and thank them for all their efforts.
Excellent. Thank you.
That's it. Oh, and the tree lighting was wonderful and beautiful in the center of town.
That was nice.
That's great.
The
That's
common
pretty
looks
exciting, too.
Common looks fantastic.
That was great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Canfield.
Nothing from me, thank you.
Mr. Pearson?
Nothing.
Nothing for me.
Okay. Dr. Berdos?
Just like to wish everyone a wonderful, happy holidays when we have our recess, at the end of next Friday.
Yes.
And coming back after the new year. So a happy new year to everyone, for a healthy new year, and just really happy holidays to everyone.
Thank you. Dr. Burrows?
I'll just say ditto to that.
Mr. Yukna?
I'm good.
All right. And all I have is piggybacking off of what Dr. Berdos said and Dr. Burrows dittoed. Happy holidays and Happy New Year to everybody. Don't come to school sick. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn, please.
Second.
All in favor? 500, we stand in adjournment until January 3rd.
See you next year.